And here we are.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Linder from Checkpoint's Office of the CTO, and welcome to another episode of CISOtalk. Today I'm joined by one of our primary guests, Mr. Pete Nicoletti. Pete's a field CISO here at Checkpoint Software, and he's got 17 years at the CISO level, 32 years in information technology, former CISO at companies like Hertz Global Car Rentals and several others. He's a highly published and highly credentialed field CISO with a lot to his name. So Pete, welcome back to CISO Talks.
Hey, thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. This is my second one. This is kind of fun and exciting. You know, here we are. It's late at night. I mean, security never sleeps.
No.
We're working at 8 o'clock at night. I gotta say it because, and you got your new promotion, so you're working double extra hard. Congratulations on
Thank you for sliding that in. Nobody cares about
your spokesmodelship, and we're pretty excited about it.
All right, so listen, what people want to hear about is some breaking news. I know that Pete's one of our resident experts. He's knee deep in what's going on in ransomware and some of the newest developments. And we all hear a lot of what's going on at the highest levels in the news. But tonight we're going to share a couple of breaking news segments and go a little bit deeper and see where things are going. Now, Pete, first of all, obviously ransomware remains in the news every single day. And, people are getting fatigue. We have all the different fatigues, the Zoom fatigue, the pandemic fatigue. People have, obviously, breach fatigue. Now we have ransomware fatigue, where our eyes are glazing over. And I think people are kind of becoming numb to it. What are some of the new developments that those security professionals watching must be aware of, must be tuned into?
Well, the biggest issue is that they're increasing in frequency. According to both not only our research from Checkpoint and our threat feeds and the research they're doing, because we do research for the banking industries and verticals, and we're watching and preventing all these issues. But we're seeing a dramatic increase. Our peers and other security companies are seeing the same thing. But the biggest thing behind it is we're emboldening these criminals by. We've spent over $600 million this year in ransomware. And now with the crazy affiliate and partnership, the expansion of what they're doing is from just ransomware to other attacks with DDoS, and we'll talk about a few more coming up, and having an integrated ticketing system between their partners and themselves, because they have so many in-process hacks. They have hundreds of in-process ransomwares and targets, and they have to have a ticketing system. So they're so organized. Right? Yeah, they're even legitimately setting up companies and hiring through a front, and competing with researchers going to universities and researchers going to legitimate companies, because they have so much money involved. So lots of developments.
I mean, so when we talk about affiliates and partners, I think you touched on it, but what exactly does that mean? What are you saying? I mean, is ransomware sounds like some kind of ecosystem, a legitimate business ecosystem resembling that? Tell us a little more about that.
Well, think about it. We subcontract out many things in our business. We don't, if we set up a voice system, we're using Zoom. We set up a ticket system, we're using ServiceNow. We're using cloud services all the time. There is on the dark web a whole affiliate system of people that are doing call centers. They're doing translation. They're managing encryption keys. They're doing encrypted voice calls now as part of triple extortion ransomware. They're extorting the third level victim. So, and it's not just the primary hackers now, it's a whole ecosystem, and the ecosystem is competing for business, and they're saying, well, we can do this cheaper than them, and it's actually it's a whole economy that's out there built on ransomware because we're paying and we're losing.
Yeah, like a cottage industry, or I don't know. I mean,
more than cottage. It's more than cottage.
More than cottage. Okay.
Right.
All right. Hey, let me talk about types of leverage. First of all, ransomware, shockingly and disappointingly, has that the model of leverage to get people to pay has evolved in very unfortunate ways. And I'm going to let you talk about the most modern ways that this has evolved and how disturbing this is. First, let me give you some background. When you look at the history of ransomware, of course, in the beginning, it was simply a matter of capturing a hard drive, encrypting it, and demanding a payment to decrypt to get the decryption keys. Later, these bad actors obviously evolved just a little. Before they encrypt those machines, they're stealing data, exfiltrating data, and holding that data for ransom, which some have speculated is perhaps today even more powerful than encrypting a drive. But why don't you talk to us about triple and even quadruple levels of extortion here and how the leverage has increased and what techniques they're using?
These guys are sitting around drinking Russian vodka, dreaming up additional schemes, the
God.
additional schemes to extract money from from America. And the third level is it happened where a company in Korea was hacked, and the plans for an Apple device were stolen. And the hackers, the affiliates, contacted Apple and said, "Hey, we want 50 million bucks. Otherwise, we're going to release the blueprints to your next device." So it's now that's the triple. And Apple made it go away pretty quietly. There's been not a lot of chatter on the boards about what Apple did. But imagine the power of Apple and the reach of Apple. Something happened there. So we're gonna someday when the documents are unsealed, we're going to read the board meeting notes. And there was a lot of frisbees thrown and a lot of craziness at Apple, but somehow they sent their security team and made that go away. So now the quadruple. So the quadruple just happened recently, where the people's information, the consumer information was taken, and the affiliates are now blackmailing and extorting money from the actual customers of the customer of the hack. So and doing other types of identity fraud and threatening and whatnot. So these people are just when they're successful with their attack, it never ends. And we've also seen double downs where a company pays for the key and gets their business back online. And because the hackers still are owning them, they hack them again and extort them again, and they pay again. It's just horrible, the amount of money that we're spending that way because we're failing.
Wow. And there have been some others I've heard about too. Robo-calling customers, stock analysts, the press. It seems like they're quite creative, right? So they're innovating. I hate to say it that way, but
they're one step ahead of us. They're one step ahead.
Incredible. Let's drill down into a little bit into something you mentioned, not by name, I think, but the July 4th attack with Kaseya. Why don't you first talk about what happened in Kaseya and why it was significant and all the aspects of that particular attack that unfortunately set a very bad precedent, and then the little twist with the FBI. What happened there?
Oh boy, that still has my eye twitching. So here we are.
That's supposed to be funny, Pete. I'm sorry.
Here we are with July 3rd weekend, and all the well-paid, well-oiled, tightly run security organizations are saying it's a 3-day weekend. Everybody gets off. You're on a skeleton crew. Well, guess what? That's exactly when the attackers know that there's going to be a long weekend. There's going to be less people looking at the SIMs and the logs and the detection technologies. The people that had prevention technologies slept like babies and drank, beer and hot dogs all weekend long.
Watch the fireworks.
And watch the fireworks, instead of the fireworks inside a data center. So, it really is about the twist was it's a supply chain attack.
All right, now we've heard this overused, this term, and I think that some don't understand. Explain how this attack really was a true supply chain attack. Maybe it wasn't directly technically similar to what happened in Sunburst last year, but how is this a supply chain attack?
Well, the companies that are using the Kaseya tool, 1,600 of them or 1,700 of them, are all beholden to their update process and their connection and their trust. They're trusting Kaseya to manage their patching and their vulnerability management and their remote administration. And there's a lot of MSSPs that were doing this on behalf of their customers using that tool. The hackers knew that. They were targeting this type of company. They learned from SolarWinds that if you attack one company, you can amplify your attack. And that's exactly what occurred with this amplification, to where one attack led to owning 1,700 different companies. So that's what's so insidious.
Well, let's talk about the 1,700 victims that were second degree or third, I don't know what we call it, but certainly indirect. The experience of a doctor's office, or I don't know, a small business coming in that Monday after whatever it was, after July 4th, or that Tuesday, and finding this. Who are they supposed to even call, Pete? What were they? We'll talk a little bit about what to do later, but what would a doctor's office have even known to do at that point? I mean, they wouldn't have a clue.
I heard about it that morning from my buddy Brad at Kinetics. He's looking to be a Checkpoint partner based on this. Brad's customers were all dark, and Kaseya, if you remember, was hardly releasing any information. It was not pretty during the early stages of the attack. There was very little information. They didn't realize what happened. They were really, and what the crazy thing is, the attack occurred against a deprecated server. The server was supposed to be taken offline. They knew that it was vulnerable for years. So it's just ludicrous that a security and a managed tool company was that negligent. But so my buddy and I were talking, and he's like, I'm doing backup, I'm doing recoveries, and the recoveries are slow, and the recoveries, a lot of times people don't test their backups, and we'll talk about backups in a little bit, but backups are not instant, unless you're doing, spending a lot of money on snapshots and multiple clouds and other types of approaches to keep your primary systems up. These people were down for days. Their businesses were down for days.
Yep. Let's talk about a twist that I think caught most people off guard, including you and me, about what the FBI was doing to try to break up what this bad actors, the ring of bad actors, and what your opinions are on what they did. So why don't you tell everybody what happened, what law enforcement agencies were involved, and what your color commentary is on how they handled it.
Yeah, so there's two twists to this that are just hard to even get your arms around. When the rebel gang went offline, the dark web chats were talking about how somebody had gotten the encryption keys to the Tor exit servers, and they had actually figured out who people were behind the scenes, so they went dark. So thinking about that, that's actually hard to do. You have somebody some administrator in the rebel group shared those keys, or the FBI found them, or some other hacker found them. So there's a weird twist to the story there that we don't know the whole story yet. We just know the text from the administrator. But then the real punch in the nose was the FBI. It comes out that the FBI had the keys. They had compromised the servers, and they had pulled down the encryption keys for all the different victims, and had them, and were perhaps testing them or whatever for 17 days. So
what was in the head of the FBI? What do you think the reasons for this were?
I talked to an FBI agent 2 days after this news came out, and I can't name names, but he said, look, we were trying to take them all down, and we made the calculation that it was more valuable to take them down than the business losses. Now, when you start adding up outage costs, back when I was at Hertz, it was $20,000 a second. So when we were dark, it was $20,000 a second. You do your revenue, you divide it by seconds, and all the other extra costs with legal and recovery costs and incident response, you add that on top of your lost revenue. And a lot of companies have a lot of losses. If you add that up, it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So somewhere in Washington, there was somebody doing a calculus saying the the benefits to our justice system exceed that of the costs that these poor, small businesses are going through. Personally, until I know more, I'm kind of on the other side of the FBI. I would have released the keys to Kaseya. I would have immediately, the minute that I had those, I would have rushed those keys to the customers, and I would have still pursued every legal. And what we have a feckless. We have no extradition. We can't launch cruise missiles into Russia. So
Uh,
we have to wait till they travel to Poland and Lithuania and snap them up.
and let's drill on that. So just this story is the one that keeps on giving. There was some developments along the lines of some arrests made. Why don't you talk about that? And more importantly, does that matter? What will anyone in the industry or whoever realize any benefit of these arrests? And what is your color on that? So start by telling us what happened.
Well, if you look at the FBI's most wanted cyber criminals, there's rewards of up to $50 million for some of these scumbags. So it's quite a dramatic reward. Sorry about the pooch in the background. It's
All right, it's a way of life.
it's Zoom in 2021. So anyway, boy, I might have to shut the door. So anyway, they just pinched two people, one in Poland and one in Lithuania. They also seized a considerable amount of ransomware payments, so $6 million. So they announced another $10 million to other leaders of the rebel group. So there's more rewards out there. They pinched two. They're waiting to see if they can extradite them. I think we'll get the guy from Poland. I don't know about Lithuania, what our agreements are. But, the second part of your question, Brian, absolutely not. It's like, holding your hand up to a wave. The wave is upon us. And a couple of bit players, even if they were leaders, there's the tools are out there, the ecosystem's out there. The affiliates are willing to do all the rest of the work, and our companies keep leaving their guards down. And so as long as that equation and formula is in place, we're going to continue to see ransomware even in these days with two guys just taken down. Two.
I'm hoping it's not a lost cause. Let's drill in on something that you talked about earlier, which I think is really valuable. That is this notion of the July 4th weekend. You had some companies in a posture of detection, where watching the SIMs, and then you had other companies that maybe were more in a preventive stance. Let's talk about prevention. Is it a lost cause? Do we take steps preventatively? Maybe you could identify a couple of the top methods that organizations could follow to prevent a ransomware attack in the first place.
Well, sure. For companies that are still in Gen 3 technologies and using perhaps best of breed tools that aren't talking together and don't have the API and SIM and SOAR tools all tying everything together, for those companies, you got to be looking at assuming failure. And assuming failure means you better be backing up your systems. You better be doing a bang up job at vulnerability management. You better be doing a huge amount of work protecting email. The email is still 65-75% of the vector. So if you're not deploying the absolute latest, for example, the API-based email protection, AI-based protection, far better than the old school gateways. If you're not putting that type of top-notch email protection in place, making sure you have immutable backups. In fact, sometimes dual backup technology, because
redundant backups.
Backups.
Yeah.
And then, the second part of that thought is, a lot of people never thought of their recovery time objective. How long does it take to restore to bare metal? If I'm totally wiped off the planet and I go to backups or snapshots, how long before I'm processing credit cards, taking phone calls and running my business? And sometimes people are paying. So certain hospitals have paid because they put their backups on floppies and sent them off to a cave. And it took a week for them to recover their stuff from Stone Mountain somewhere, and it doesn't work. So you have to recover it quickly. And once again, just to reiterate, patching and vulnerability management, people, these attacks hit vulnerabilities that everybody knows about. These weren't 0-day vulnerabilities. These were known vulnerabilities that were compromised. And there's one more thought that's just unbelievable. You used to think about, it used to be kind of a joke when I was starting the HoneyNet project, how long it took a server to be compromised, scanned and compromised on the internet. And it used to be hours and days and whatnot.
What is it now, Pete?
Oh, well, the stat is crazier now. Now it's seconds. It's seconds and minutes. But what's more interesting is once it's compromised, what happens after that? It used to be just a year ago, it used to be about an hour and a half before the bad guys would say, oh, I got one, and start doing the east-west and the local Active Directory scanning and looking for additional targets within the network. That used to be an hour and a half as little as a year ago. It is under 20 minutes now. So think about it. Your tools, if they're only detection, you have to be able to see that detection and know that it's a problem, and use all your tools and spin your chair and log into all your systems and and do whatever you got to do during your ransomware investigation to see if it's legit. And you have to do that in under 20 minutes. And that time is getting shorter all the time. Otherwise, you're going to have additional compromises past the inception point or the initial vector. So that's what the timing is shrinking. We have less time to respond, and you just have to move toward a preventative, posture.
Let's stay on this for a second. Let's assume that an organization has maybe been a little behind in their ability to get ahead of this, and they've gotten hit with a ransomware attack. Let's talk about, number one, the most asked question in all of these sessions that we've done, and you've been part of all of them. Should they pay the ransom, number one, and what should they do if they find themselves in that unfortunate situation where they have been hit and are trying to recover, trying to make something out of it, and should they pay that ransom?
Well, my opinion is extremely strong at this point. If you pay the ransom, you're funding the ecosystem for additional hacks, and it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy that there's additional people that are going to be hacked. So, but think about it. It's going to occur, and it's going to continue to occur. So yes, your hair's on fire. You've just been ransomwared. You better at least have a sketch of a plan. You better have some kind of an idea what you're going to do, whether it be call in experts, call in an incident response team. Checkpoint has an incident response team. Other vendors have incident response teams. I'm kind of partial to ours. I've actually been engaged a couple times, and they're top notch. I've done a couple hundred as incident commander, and I know what it takes. And Checkpoints is pretty good. Now here's the next thing. If you're really in a bad way and your backups are not coming online, and it's just your revenue loss is too much, and everybody's screaming, pay the ransom, don't do it directly. Engage a ransomware negotiator. There's people out there, I have good friends over there at GroupSense, not to plug them too much, but Kelly and his company, they've negotiated a couple of hundred of these, and they actually save the company money. I mean, instead of paying the $6 million demand, they might pay $60,000.
Yeah.
They know how to talk to them. They actually have Russian speakers. It's kind of crazy that there's another ecosystem to fight, the ransomware. But at least they're the good guys, and they're at least on your side, and they're going to be, negotiating on your behalf. So,
tell me something. When you engage in the payment of the ransom, whether it's through a ransomware negotiator or otherwise, do these companies have any guarantees that that's going to result in a recovery of their data?
There's absolutely no guarantee. In fact, I think the numbers are still pretty good, though. I think it's, what is it, 60% that actually get the key. So I
Because
know
it's a
that,
business model, right, Pete? If they
yeah,
didn't get the key, it breaks the whole business model
right.
for all of the bad actors,
Yeah,
right?
you break the trust in your ransomware hacker. Imagine that we don't trust our hackers anymore if they don't give us the key. So it's kind of crazy, but yeah,
And
no,
what
you're
about what about a case where they pay the ransom, or I'll reverse that. They don't pay the ransom. They're being, obviously emboldened. They've got good backups, but then we see these bad actors come forward and say, "No problem. You won't pay the ransom because you think you're cute. You think you're going to decrypt your own machines. We're gonna sell your data. We're going to leak your data on the dark web." You talked about triple and quadruple extortion. That's something that's very, very difficult to control, right? Even if you pay the ransom or if you don't.
It is. And, I think everyone starts to read their cyber insurance policies very carefully, because in that 4-point text on page 62, there's a lot of disclaimers, of course, force majeure and everything else. There's every excuse not to pay a cyber insurance claim. So if you get your lawyer to look carefully at the terms, and there's no recourse for cyber insurance, and you're going to have losses. You're going to have to pay consumers if they're affected, if you want to keep your reputation. You're going to have to, the lawyers to the other company, because you were the one that was hacked, are going to come after you. So you're going to have losses there. So really carefully think about how your business operates in the modern world, and consider a worst case scenario, and consider what those costs are going to be, and fund those security tools that your CISO is asking for. Don't wait for a budgetary creation event. All right, plan for this. Think about it. Ransomware is a budgetary creation event. And it's a CISO joke. We can do this now and we can be calm about it, or we can do it with our hair on fire and spend triple the amount after a hack, and still have those costs. So I don't like to be the "I told you so," but I have a stack of documents that I whip out and say, "I told you so," and it doesn't feel that good. I'm
Yeah.
old enough to be over that. When I was younger, I used to say, "I told you so" a lot. Now it's like I just look at them with a funny look, and they know
That's
what I'm saying.
the Pete Nicoletti funny look. You don't want to see that look. Believe me,
You
you
don't
don't
want
want
to
to see
see
it.
that.
Let's start to move to closure, and I can tell you what people want to know. They want to know what the future looks like. I mean, you have a lot of visibility on this, both from obviously in the role of CISO, but also over here on our side. And what do you see as a future on this? Does it get better? Is it going to increase, decrease? What kind of trends do you see? Tell me what your look on this is in terms of prophecy.
Well, it's unfortunate. We do have the best threat research out there. We also, with Johnny and his team, with Cindy and I working with him as part of the CISO or office, we're constantly finding and seeing new attack vectors. Johnny just put out an internal bulletin based on successful cell phone takedowns, and the fact that a lot of people are using cell phones for two-factor authentication. And what we're seeing is SIM takeovers. We're seeing unscrupulous cellular providers, for $50, I can take over your account. And then with that ownership of your cell phone, I can now drain your bank account because you thought it was good enough to get your authentication through your cell phone. So we're seeing an increase in that. We're seeing other multi-factor hacks. We're seeing hackers go after home users because they typically don't, the first time they ever set up their Xfinity router, they used the default password and have never changed it. Or they bought a half brain, some Chinese firewall or some Chinese something that has the default password, and they've never changed it. So there's hundreds of thousands and millions of these devices out there that are easily found by scanning, and then easily compromised. And then that's the vector to attack executives and other people working from home. Everybody's working from home. When I was a penetration tester and led the teams down at Terramark, I didn't start at the corporation. I started at the executive houses. We would whack the the heck out of the home executives, the board members, and we would slurp data right from the trusted source of the CEO or it was especially fun at the CIOs and CISOs, if we got a hold of those, but that was rare. But anyway, and finally, we're going to see an increase, unfortunately, in supply chain attacks. Exactly what happened with Kaseya. We have a huge dependence on other people's services. I mean, think what happened to Robinhood just, what is it? I can't even remember. It's yesterday or today.
Yeah.
Robinhood was, here's a financial company that has fiduciary responsibility to their members that should have, very adequate security, and Robinhood, they're hacked. So it's going to continue to increase until we start changing our posture. And we've got a huge HR problem with experts. We don't have enough security executives. The numbers are crazy. Checkpoint just launched an initiative this week, a huge initiative for training. We're now part of 200 other universities and training facilities and online security tools. So we're making the investment, but at the same time, we have 500 open requisitions for new employees. At 5,000, we need to be 5,500, and we're having tough times finding the level of expertise. So it's going to continue to happen.
I think and organizations everywhere struggle to have the right skill set and even find it. In the Great Resignation and in all the displacement of employment, it's impossible to get the right skill sets in, isn't it? I mean, only the very few organizations willing to pay what these skills are worth. Very, very difficult challenge for them.
And think about the average CISO. I used to joke with my team and say that, the average CISO lasts only about 14, 15 months. And I used to say, look, guys, I want to be just a little bit above average. I want to be a CISO. I want to make it to 2 years.
Did you?
I did it. I've done it. I did it without getting a significant event either. They stole some Bentleys, but they didn't steal any information. So,
okay. Pete Nicoletti, Field CISO, Checkpoint Software, former CISO of Hertz. Pete, your wisdom and knowledge and experience are invaluable. The audience is grateful, and thanks for joining us on this episode of CISOtalk. We will definitely see you and your colleague Cindy and some others in future episodes. With that, we'll wrap for the week. Pete, how can they contact you, or what's the best way for them to get a little more information on what we talked about today?
Only my mother calls me Peter, but Peter N at checkpoint.com. I'm known by Pete, so call me by Pete, but my email's Peter N. And I'd love to hear from anybody that has questions. As a field CISO, we're into strategic, help. We help companies. We can point you in the right way. And a lot of times we're not selling Checkpoint. We're not a commissioned group. So Cindy Carter, both are helping customers out. She has some different special areas of verticals. I have some others, but contact me. Would love to help you out. We have a whole ecosystem of things that we can do to help you, and we're ready to hear from you. And
Pete,
Brian,
thanks for the time.
thank you very much for being the best host of CISOtalk ever.
Okay.
And we're going to have more fun because this is just the beginning, buddy.
Sure is, bud. Pete Nicoletti, Checkpoint's Field CISO. This is CISO Talks. Thanks for joining. We'll see you on the next episode.